All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Urban Living webinar. Today, we are going to be talking about the future of the single-family rental sector. My name is George Sell. I'm the editor of Urban Living News, and we are an online platform for the living and hospitality sector news and views. Today's webinar is going to last an hour. We are going to have roughly 45 minutes of Q&A with our panelists. We'd like to make it an interactive session, so if you have any questions, please do submit them using the chat or the Q&A function in Zoom. We'll either answer them there and then, or we'll save a bit of time at the end of the session. And everybody who has registered for the webinar will get a link to a recording over the next couple of days. Just wanted to show a bit of context just before we start the conversation. And these are all stories that we've run fairly recently on Urban Living News, and a few of them involve some of our speakers here today. But just to give you a flavour of what's going on in the sector, there are a lot of big deals going ahead between house builders and SFR operators. You can see top left there, Vistry's signed a deal to deliver 5,000 units for Sigma. We are seeing a premium of a rental premium of over 20% for single family rental over ordinary PRS homes, according to recent research. We're seeing some big institutional investors get involved, such as pension funds. We're seeing new house builders getting involved. So Strata in the bottom left there have signed 2 single family rental deals in the last few weeks. And also we're going to talk a bit about marketing, and you can see bottom row there in the middle, Simple Life last year launched the first single family rental TV advertising campaign, and no doubt we'll hear some more about that from Vicky later in the session. So let's meet our panelists. We'll ask them all to introduce themselves, and we'll go from left to right as we see them on the screen. First of all, let's hear from Graham from the ARL, who is actually a supporting partner for this webinar. Graham, good morning to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for putting this on, George, and I'm looking forward to having this discussion. So I'm Graham Sibley. I'm Operations and Marketing Director at the Association for Rental Living. We're the body that represents all institutionally backed, professionally managed rental living, including and the very important and growing single family market. We also cover co-living and multifamily, and interestingly, coming out on the rails, we're seeing more from later living as well. What we do, representing the sector, we are an advocate for the sector. We work with government, local authorities, and other stakeholders to promote the sector. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the issues which we're tackling at the moment. We are about raising standards, and driving professional standards and quality, and also creating opportunities in networking and thought leadership. So I look forward to discussing things today.
Thank you, Graham. Vicky, welcome to you.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Vicky Fryer from Sigma Capital Group. So Sigma, we focus primarily on single family housing, build to rent housing across the UK. We are about 12,500 properties completed to date over the course of the last 10 years. And we were the originators of single family housing build to rent in the UK arena. And the majority of our homes now are taken to market through our own brand called Simple Life Homes. So as a marketing director, obviously oversee all of that as well as our corporate brands.
Thank you, Vicky. And finally, Katherine, good morning to you.
Morning. Hi, George. Thank you very much for having me on here. I'm excited about the topics that we're going to cover today. So I'm Katherine Rose, Managing Director of VervLife. VervLife are a third-party operator working across single-family housing, co-live and build-to-rent multifamily UK-wide. We manage all of our assets for our clients under a white label basis, anywhere from Exeter to Glasgow. We get involved at super early stages, looking at viability, feasibility, and provide advice through the design phase as well.
Thank you, Katherine. You can see the LinkedIn profiles of all our speakers in the chat. So if you want to connect with them and carry on the discussion afterwards, then please do have a look on there and drop them a line. Okay, Graham, let's kick off with you. We've heard quite a bit recently about how the single family rental sector has undergone rapid growth. It saw almost half the investment in the total investment in build to rent, I think in 23 and 24. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the sector in terms of regulatory changes, economic uncertainty, and perhaps competition from other housing models? Graham, you're on mute.
Yeah, simple mistake. Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks for the good opening question there, George. There's a number of factors. I think we overall, and talking to investors and operators, there's an overall very strong sentiment for future growth. That's the first thing to say. But and you're absolutely right. In 23-24, we saw about a 45-46% increase in investment in single family, which is really positive. And it continues to grow as a proportion of the build to rent sector. That said, from a low base. Some issues still are presenting themselves. I think from a regulatory point of view, we see the Renters' Rights Bill as it passes through Parliament. We should see that go back. We could well see that become law by the summer. And our concerns in there are what could be happening on the potential impact on tenancies, particularly an issue of not having long-term tenancies available necessarily. That's going to have an impact in the multifamily market for students, for example. It's going to have a impact on later living, where people want to rent for the long period. But in particular for single family, we know that single family residents want to stay and have the security of tenure, the security of the home, the quality of the life they can have in those homes for the longer period. And we are concerned that there are issues there. On the broader scale, we have issues, or there has been the threat of rent controls. We've seen that very strongly in Scotland. We are getting mood music. That's not going to happen in the rest of the UK, which is positive, because what we know is from the Scottish experience, many billions of pounds of investment have been stopped in build to rent. So we're thankful that's not looking like it's happening. That's a headwind we don't have to worry about. On a broader scale, not necessarily government-led, we have cost of debt with interest rates still high, relatively so, and that's having an impact on in investment confidence. And build cost inflation continues to be an issue as well. So all these things have an impact moving forward on viability. And that said, from the single family market, is much better placed to handle those than the large scale multifamily apartment blocks. One positive thing I'll say, we've seen the NPPF, the planning framework new guidance come in, which does recognise build to rent, including single family, as a tenure, and giving guidance to local authorities to include build to rent in their plans. In fact, we're looking almost mandating, and to have that within a mixed tenure environment. I'm sure we'll get into that more importantly later, but I think single family has got a really important role in being part of a mixed tenure mix.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Vicky, you've got your hand up there. Did you want to come in on one of those points?
Yeah, I was just going to expand a little bit more on the periodic tenancies, because we're already sort of at Sigma, we're already through the Simple Life brand, we're already starting to kind of implement those. So what we're doing at the moment is offering our sort of 12-month leases, and then after the 12 months, they go straight onto periodic anyway, just to try and forward think really and bring us in line with what we're anticipating to happen. And actually to date, what we have found is it's actually been quite positively received. I think once people are in that first 12 months of their tenancy with us anyway, and they start to actually recognise what build to rent is about, and the fact that our homes are there for them as long as they want, they're not going to be sold from beneath their feet. They have that security, and actually I think it's a real benefit for them, because they feel more empowered as a renter, but also they've just got that flexibility. They've got the peace of mind that they've got the security of tenure for as long as they want, but at the same time, if they wanted that flexibility to move, they're not necessarily trapped in for long term as well. So from our side, we're actually seeing quite positive feedback from that, and actually it's quite positive for us as a build to rent company as well. Anyway, we don't really see that as a negative. The only other thing that I was going to mention was obviously the potential scrapping of Section 21 and through no-fault evictions. So the only kind of, I suppose, potential issue with that might be that in terms of antisocial behaviour, it might make our job a little bit harder as a professional landlord. But it's encouraging to see that there might be potential sort of bolstering to the Section 8s to kind of counteract that a little bit.
Yeah, Vicky, is it worth for people who don't know, just talking briefly about what the Renters' Right Bill actually says in terms of length of tenancies, what the change actually is likely to be?
Yeah, so I believe, I know it everything keeps kind of changing. It seems to be a bit of a moving target, but I believe the last I heard that it would basically be a periodic tenancy from the offset. So you wouldn't necessarily, at the moment, as I said, we're doing sort of 12 months. Then they're on a basically what I would call in layman's terms 12, like a rolling month contract. It would be that from the very start, which I think that would be the bigger thing. Is kind of like, I suppose the only question in my mind would be that initial period, making sure you're actually getting people that are committed for a certain amount of time and they're not just wanting to stay for a month or two. I think that would be the bigger question. But yeah, that's as it stands at the moment, that's what I believe. Graham, Graham, is that what you believe it to be?
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's that first, you know, where people could actually be dipping in and out quite quickly, and as an operator or investor, you may be having people will be signing up and then moving out, and you potentially have voids, and then you've got to remarket as well.
Yeah.
Katherine, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I just think one of the challenges is also the as your opening slide talked about, the premium that you have in single family housing against PRS stock or other stock in the area. And there's a potential within 6 months that tenants can challenge the advertised rent that they've agreed to and signed up to. So I think that is putting investors slightly nervously in terms of their underwrites and how they can see that rent and the rental growth as well over the period. So that's a potential challenge for the sector.
Yeah, okay. Katherine, we've seen a couple of years of really quite rapid growth in this sector. Is that something that you anticipate continuing on the same sort of level, or do you think some of these issues we're talking about now will slow things down a little bit?
That's a really good question, George. I mean, I think we all know that the property market doesn't like uncertainty. I'm being asked a lot by our investor clients what we think the impact is going to happen on the bill when it does come in, because it is going to come in, and I understand that Labour are not going to backtrack on anything. They don't want to look like they're eroding their position. So I think how it's being presented at the moment is what the industry is planning to expect to come in. I think we could potentially see a blip with this uncertainty until it's rolled out and we've all got a more stabilized approach and understand exactly what that impact is. But if it happens going into summer, we've got the summer cool down anyway with everybody off on holiday. So I can't see it being too detrimental, but it might just stall things while we all embed the new processes.
Yeah. Graham, does that tally with what you're seeing, a potential slight cooling, but generally very strong fundamentals?
Yeah, that's what I said, and really how I opened up by saying I think the medium to long term sentiment is strong. Investment wants to come in. I mean, there's no doubt, and something which we are very aware of is we have a reduction in the amount of private rental stock on the marketplace. We are still seeing more exits from private landlords. So that's putting more of a squeeze on availability, rental rates, etc., and people actually being able to get a home that they want. So that's the challenge now. Is the supply demand is going the wrong way, but we know that investors do see the draw of long-term stable incomes, and they can hedge it against inflation. They do see the opportunity for robust rental growth, and actually at the moment we've got a slowing sales market. So there's great opportunity at this point, and I'm sure we're going on to talk about how house builders are viewing this. There's big opportunity to move forward if that uncertainty can be erased. So the Renters' Rights Bill needs to become law as soon as possible, so that uncertainty is taken away.
Yeah, Katherine, what you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, just in addition, in terms of the challenges, but also the benefits of single family housing, it's less risky in terms of the health and safety legislation that we're seeing I know I was joking about second stairs earlier, but from a health and safety perspective, it's far easier from an operational perspective to manage and run. Our operational budgets are far leaner. Obviously, we're not got lifts or any central plant and equipment, so it's quite attractive from that perspective. And as Graham and Vicky have said, tenants do tend to stay longer in single family housing, so you don't have the churn, the marketing costs, the relets, and as much potential wear and tear as you've got those tenancy churns. So there are some positives from that institutional investor appetite, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. Vicky, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, kind of in addition to that, with the new, obviously, me and Graham were at an ARL Northwest committee sort of event last year. One of the key themes of that as well was about the government target of 1.5 million additional homes that they're wanting to build. And I think it was quite resounding in that session in terms of the role that build to rent could actually play in the delivery of that, and the importance that actually it'd be brilliant if we can start to get local planning councils and government to realise the role that and see build to rent as a solution within that, just because of purely the pace of delivery as well. Quite often when we've got build to rent sites where it's a mixed tenure scheme with open market sale and affordable, actually, because we're able to build at that pace and fill those houses at that pace because there is the demand there, very quickly that place starts to become exactly that, a place, and it starts to feel lived in, it's more desirable, and actually the open market really benefits from that as well, and then they can deliver kind of more of a pace themselves, which ordinarily they might not have been able to because they can only really build at the pace of as the sales. So I think that's a real opportunity in the next few years for build to rent as well on the single family housing side.
Yeah, well, Vicky, let's talk a bit more about delivery then. Obviously, apart from one or two interesting examples such as Present Made, the vast majority of supply is coming from house builder stock, which is being sold in large tranches at a discount, but it's traditionally been the same as the for sale stock. But with this kind of multi-tenure approach gaining momentum now, are we seeing house builders kind of planning from the outset to on bigger schemes to put a certain amount of inventory aside with the purpose of it going to a rental investor?
Yeah, I mean, we used to forward fund, obviously, like we used to forward fund a lot more sites, and then I suppose in the last probably 1 to 2 years, there's been a lot more opportunities for us to buy existing stock from house builders where they've maybe had a lack of sales. We're definitely seeing in the last sort of 6 to 12 months it being back to what we would have as sort of our norm, where we're sort of back to sort of forward funding, we're back to sort of being involved in those developments from the offset, and we've already got a proportion allocated to us, and we're within that sort of that planning process. So yeah, I think we're definitely seeing across the board. I mean, our house building partners has massively expanded as well in terms of the roster of those. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of house builders are now realising the opportunity for them, and actually they're seeing build to rent as being a key part of their business, and they're kind of, I suppose, fostering more of a partnership approach than we've ever seen before, which is really good news for us. Obviously, it's less of a sort of trying to sell it into them and them understanding exactly what we're about. It's already something that's part of their kind of long-term business strategy, which is great to see.
Are you starting to see SME house builders now coming into your roster? Because it has traditionally been the volume players who've been supplying most of it. But I mean, the strata deals are an interesting one. I mean, they're not a small house builder, but they're not one of the top volume guys by any means. So it's interesting to see people like that coming on board.
For us at Sigma, it's definitely still the larger house builders. Purely, I mean, I think a lot of that is down to the amount of access to land, the longer term sort of view in terms of the partnerships. It's really important to us that we've got that partnership model. They understand exactly, and they're exactly aligned with us in terms of what we're wanting developed, what our expectations are. It's all streamlined. The standardization of our plots and our property types and our spec is really, really key for us when we're building at scale. It's so important for us to have that. So with the smaller house builders, that's less likely to achieve. Having said that, We are working with Kellen Homes a great deal within the Northwest, and obviously they're a kind of they haven't been around for as many years, but the existing partnership was already there with Ian Kelly from his time at Countryside, because he was key to I mean the original funds that we did for single family housing back in the day. So for us, it's still very much the larger partnership models, but is definitely, as we've seen in the news, there's obviously a lot more different smaller house builders coming on board and trying the hand build to rent as well.
Would your minimum sort of deal size be defined by number of units or by value?
In terms of number of units, I would always say that I think our sweet spot would be kind of your 100 mark plus. You wouldn't want it, likewise, you wouldn't want it too large as well because of the potential development risk and the kind of length of time to deliver. But having said that, we do have much smaller sites. I think our smallest site is about 25 units. And a lot of our smaller sites to date have, in the last sort of 2 years, have been more where there's been those house builder sites where they've struggled to sell, and therefore we've taken a certain proportion of them and they were pre-built stock.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Graham, did you want to come in on that point?
Absolutely, yeah. So echoing very much what Vicky says, and I was going to mention Kellen Homes, for example, because they're a really good example of a regional builder. So what I'm seeing is both ends of the scale. I'm seeing volume house builders now coming to the ARL and our single family committee and wanting to be involved, and which is positive. But then I'm also talking to a lot of investors around the country who like working with more regional developers as well, and some of those are taking on board the idea of partnership. So definitely Kellen's one there. I've seen Gleeson Homes setting up partnership divisions, Allison Homes as well. These are all, and now you've got Strata as well. So I think there's quite a the benefits of working with those regional developers is you can potentially work more in partnership with and set out with an early engagement point of view what you're looking for as well. The spec is so important. Is it being designed and built to the quality and the specification that allows easy maintenance ongoing for the investor, for the operator? And so we are seeing that very well. I've seen the Sigma Countryside / Vistry model work very well across the board, where you had senior leaders of both organisations very much committed to a shared risk sharing vision. So that risk sharing can come in as well. Partnership can only come with early engagement and shared values and shared goals. What we've obviously seen is a downturn in the sales market, and also the fact that affordable housing stock, Section 106, housing associations don't have the funds to buy that stock. So there's even more stock available, but not necessarily to the quality and the standards that you might want as a long-term investor and operator.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Katherine, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think it's just that partnership point that both Graham and Vicky have mentioned. I think 7 years ago, we were seeing the large house builders work very much in their regional silos. They had their own targets they had to hit. And Vicky, you'll know far better than I do. I'm speaking on my client's behalf, but you had to forge relationships with individual regions. But now I think, as Vicky said, that there's more awareness in the house builders, whether they are smaller SMEs or the larger ones, where actually they've embraced the single family housing opportunity. And once you've done one deal, now you can centralize it a bit more, and it's much more cookie cutter, because you're not on that educational piece and our clients aren't having to set out their expectations. You've done one deal, you understand how you work together, you've agreed to a contract and your terms, and you can pick it up, whether it's in the southwest or the northeast. I think the sector's just evolved and come on so much, and I think that, as Vicky said, they're looking to really embrace single family housing rentals as a solution to balance out their sales strategies.
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. Graham, one thing we have seen recently that was quite interesting is Berkeley Homes setting up a build to rent division, so retaining some of the stock which was originally intended for private sale and operating it themselves. Obviously, you need to be of a certain scale and have pretty deep pockets to do that, but do you think that's something that some of the bigger well-funded volume house builders might look to do?
Yeah, no, we've seen some movement in that respect from Barratt, the Barratt David Wilson Barratt Group, and to a certain extent Taylor Wimpey starting to look at that as well. So I think there is that scope, and as I say, we even had Persimmon come to talk to us. So they're looking at how they can engage with the sector rather more. Whether they take on the full risk and the full operation, that's a whole different model though, because that is a skill set that is really important to get right. As a build to rent sector, we're promoting standards and quality of service and customer service and quality across the board. So will the likes of Berkeley operate the same way? That's the challenge, and we're going forward with a code of practice and a customer charter for the sector. These are really important things to differentiate the build to rent and single family sectors from private rental, particularly with government and local authorities. And we need to engage with the likes of Berkeley to ensure that they are operating to those same standards, because the sector needs to have consistency of delivery and service and experience for the sector to really cut through and culturally and really prove itself to be a really good choice for living.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Katherine, what are the main operational challenges of single family rental, and what are the main differences between multifamily and single family? What are the biggest challenges you face in moving into the SFR market?
There's the challenges that you get across both multifamily and single family is handovers being delayed, so struggling and juggling PC dates and resourcing it with our centralised team. We do have a more centralised approach to our single family housing. I think PC dates and snagging at handover is a big one. That is always a challenge. And also just understanding where your units that are getting handed over sit on the plot, and whether the road's not finished. Is just managing the residents' expectations when they do move in, that there's still potentially a construction site on the other side of the hoarding. So that I would say is a challenge. It's less challenging, as I said, from a health and safety perspective, and it's less challenging really in terms of resident engagement. Our single family housing residents tend to want to generally keep themselves to themselves. They've got busy lives. They're normally, working families with children, so busy doing school runs and everything like that. So I think that resident engagement is less onerous for the teams, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. Vicky, let's talk a bit about the customer. Who is actually renting these houses? I'm interested to know what the demographics are like, and are they people who traditionally would have been trying to buy one of these houses but can't quite get there in terms of mortgage affordability and so on, or is it a broader demographic than that?
Yeah, I mean, very broad, which definitely makes my life in marketing that bit harder. Because it is just a cross kind of section of the general population in the UK. Ultimately, we actually tend to see, although we obviously say it's family housing, we do tend to see it actually across the board. Generally, it's about 50% families, and the other 50% being made up of kind of couples, first time movers out, fleeing the parent nest. We'll have early retirees, so a full mix really. And again, in terms of kind of household incomes, again, full mix. We've got everything from some professional footballers, Z-list celebrities, and just your general sort of general household income that you'd expect in the UK. So it is a very, very broad mix really. We also do see some people have the mindset now of I'm only interested in renting. I'm actually less kind of bothered about wanting to buy, which was always obviously the norm in the UK. I still would say that is definitely the norm, but we are starting to see that a lot of the younger generation maybe perhaps not being as bothered. Everyone's sort of I suppose tapped into this mentality of pay as you go, whether that's the phone, then the Netflix, the car, whatever it is. But at the same time, on the other hand, we do have, particularly in our mixed tenure schemes, we do see a lot of residents who decide they're going to rent with us because actually they can't quite afford to buy at the moment, and actually they did want to buy on that same scheme. And sometimes then people use that as an opportunity to try before they buy, so they actually do rent from us for maybe 12 months, and if it's a very large site, they'll still be developing for open market sale at that point, and then at the point that they can afford, they'll then move over into one of the open market sales. So it is a complete mixed bag, really.
Yeah, I can see some operational challenges arising from having footballers and Z-list celebrities on there, but that's probably for another session.
Yeah, and it also changes site by site as well, which is the additional complexity, I think, with single family housing. It's not just, we've got I think it's over 110 schemes across the UK now, so it's 110 different locations, and you can find that what works for one site, what sort of customer demographic is in one site, is completely different to another one. So it's not quite the same as your multifamily having kind of five very large schemes, and you can really clear cut see those trends. It's very different on a site by site basis.
Yeah, I want to come back to you in a minute, Vicky, and find out a bit more about how you reach such a broad demographic. But Graham, I'll come to you next. I see you got your hand up there.
Yeah, it was just a bit more about the stats we had from reports last year in the Who Lives in Build to Rent report, and talking to some other operators in single family, is the relatively high proportion of key workers who are renting in single family, which is quite an interesting take when people talk about affordability. And I think the figures last year were something like 22% in some sites were key workers. It's just that demographic where people think built to rent and single family is about high level. Yes, it's great quality, but people are choosing, and the rent, and there is enough mix in some discounted market rent as well that'll enable a real mix of people to join that, to be in there with that, and that's really important for the breadth of community as well, community mix.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Vicky, we showed a slide earlier which featured your TV advertising campaign, which was a first for the sector. So, which marketing channels are you finding effective in reaching a demographic that's so broad? What's working?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this. So there's obviously the brand awareness sort of side, which I think we're very fortunate that we're able to do a bit of brand awareness. And even then, I mean, from a budget point of view, for group finance directors watching, it's still relatively small, because obviously the main focus has always got to be on your lease up, on your developments. And we are lucky that we do have obviously huge demand, natural demand. So again, the amount of marketing that we really need to do, proactive marketing we need to do, is probably quite small, to be honest, because the demand is there. But obviously, if we're kind of in a new location, we might look at an additional sort of paid media campaign. Obviously, your Rightmove, you're on the market, Zoopla, they're where the main bulk of your leads are inevitably going to come from. But what's quite interesting to see over the years is, I suppose, way back when, PPC, so pay per click, when you sort of how you rank on Google, that was something we never really invested in, because our thought process would be everyone's obviously going to be going to your portals, your Rightmove, etc. So actually we should be investing that money on within there, how we rank within there, within the listings, for example. And actually in the last sort of 4 years, I would say, what's really interesting to see now we're able to get that data is actually more within lease up, more leads are actually coming through our own website than the likes of all the portals, which is really strong, positive, and I suppose testament to the brand building and the kind of recognition, but also the fact that people are sort of Googling and they are sort of looking at other means and ways to find their home. In terms of marketing techniques and in terms of where the majority of our leads come from, obviously, other than the portals, of people coming through our website, site signage is absolutely key, that brand awareness within the local area. The SEO, so the Google search, is always right at the top. And also actually referral and recommendation is quite huge for us. When I say that, I think there is a proportion of people who are our existing residents referring other people. We do have a refer a friend scheme. However, that's not utilised half enough for all of those people. So I think that is just our general brand awareness of different marketing techniques. Social media is really strong for us as well. Low cost, huge sort of impressions, so you're able to get in front of as many people as possible within that local area. So we're seeing people coming from a range of media, but it's definitely all of them working together. And then obviously we've got the brand awareness side, and I think as I was saying, we are very fortunate in the number of locations and geographic scale that we've got, that we're able to do that. And you're still obviously inevitably going to be restricted by the number of stock that you've actually got available. But that is one of the hardest things, I think, with trying to raise the general awareness across the UK. I think people are a lot more aware of what single family housing build to rent is, but there's still a lot of people out there that don't quite understand exactly what it is, what the expectations are, particularly at sort of the leasing perspective as well. The idea of leasing off plan for an apartment seems to be more accepted than maybe a single family housing. People want to go around it, they want a view, which is obviously absolutely fine, but you are restricted by your batch leases. You're not taking a whole site in one go. You're taking, maybe 10 to 15 units every month, of which you're then only got those property types. So I think there's definitely sort of managing those expectations and really trying to clearly communicate what those messages are within the build to rent marketing.
Does the combination of the brand awareness and the broad geographical range of the sites you've got mean that you have customers who've gone from one scheme to another because they're kind of, they've bought into your brand?
Yes, yeah, we do see that. We see every month when we're tracking our sort of reasons for leaving, actually a proportion of those people aren't actually leaving us, they are just moving within the brand. So that could be that they are upsizing or downsizing, or indeed we see them moving between locations. So if they've had a kind of a job change, we do see them moving within locations as well, which is really great to see. Obviously for us, that sort of, we're able to start to build that loyalty as well. And I think the brand really plays a big part in that. And I know the likes of Rightmove and On the Market have played probably quite a big part in the fact that now you actually have a build to rent account, which we never was able to have before. So you're able to let the properties with your brand name, and you're able to actually pull up front a little bit more about what build to rent is. One of my bugbears in marketing from day dot has always been we are primarily really a service organisation, and it's a service offering. So quite often renters have always felt in the back foot. They will look on a listing and they will decide, right, this is the property I want to rent. It's not until they're actually in that property that they understand, right, okay, this is my landlord, this is how they behave, this is how responsive they are, this is what I can expect from them in terms of level of service for maintenance. They're only learning that once they're in, whereas actually if you look at all other sort of service providers, whether that's sort of your internet, your TV, whatever it might be, it's part of that decision-making process. The brand is part of that decision-making process and what your expectations are of them. So I think it's really positive to see in recent years that the build to rent industry can start to bring those brands more up front to manage those expectations, and people really understand who we are and what we're about, and that plays a part in their decision-making process.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Katherine, did you want to come in and talk a bit about demographics and marketing?
Yeah, I was just briefly going to mention something that Vicky's actually already covered when I had my hand up. It was just really that we're using the portals as well, as you'd expect. They're still very popular, but we're also looking more to social media. So whether it's Facebook campaigns or Instagram, just in terms of reaching out to different demographics, really. And we're really similar to Vicky in terms of the demographics and the ages that we have in our portfolio is varied and it is location specific. So.
Katherine, staying with you, one of the kind of key pillars of multifamily build to rent is trying to foster a sense of community, programming, amenity. You have to throw a lot of bells and whistles at it. It's a competitive market. What are the main differences between that and single family rentals? What do single family rental customers expect in terms of amenities? Do they want programming? How does it differ from the urban multifamily product in that respect?
So it differs in terms of amenity space and how we form that sense of community. So our resident app is really our main point of contact with our residents once they've moved in, because we won't have necessarily somebody on site unless they're doing repairs and maintenance. So the resident app, and that app allows them to forge relationships with the wider community as well in terms of resident benefits. So it might be that we have a personal trainer who advertises on there, or somebody can come around and pick up the dry cleaning, or it's partnership with a local cafe where you can get a discount in terms of 10% off your coffee. Or so it's building a sense of community in a different way. And I think I touched on it earlier in the call, our residents in our single family housing it's much more low touch, they're much more under the radar. We might do Easter egg hunts for across the scheme. Again, it depends from, again, what Vicky was saying in terms of the amount of houses that we have in one location, or, you know, sending out sunflower seeds and doing a who can grow the tallest sunflower competition. So it's a sense of community in a very different way. It isn't necessarily wine and pizza nights as it would be potentially in build to rent or co-live.
Surely everyone wants a wine and pizza night, no matter their stage of life.
But it might be getting a local pizza van, you know, on site on a Friday night. So it's a different sort of wine and pizza night.
Yeah, I've seen one of those actually on a development near here. Vicky, did you want to pick up on that point?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so obviously we're lucky enough where we've got some huge, more sort of regen sites where it is mixed tenure scheme, and you have that sort of amenity within the site being built as part of it. So you might have sort of, I don't know, some kind of shops, or you might have a gym there, or whatever it might be, cafes. And that's really nice kind of community hub. But other than sort of that and maybe your green space, it's definitely very different to multifamily in having that sort of amenity space. And like Katherine said, actually, there's a very large proportion of people in single family housing what do they actually want? And ultimately, yes, they want the professional service, but then there's going to be a proportion always that they don't want to get involved with those sort of things. They want to be able to shut the front door, live their lives, and they want to be able to have a home that they feel is their home for the long term. So it has been quite tricky for us over the years. We do I think a lot of the amenity on site. So whether that is kind of the green space, whether that is sort of events that we're putting on, we kind of class that more as sort of all-inclusive amenity in regards to inclusive community. So even when we're putting an event on the site, it's or say there's a gym that might be there, it's the local wider local amenity, anyone can use it. It's not exclusive for our residents. So I suppose it's more of a natural, authentic community where you've got your open market sale customers mixing with your build to rent customers, etc. And then, as Katherine said, I think more of the sort of exclusive community is more of your online experience within single family housing. So similar to what Katherine said, our app is the absolute main point of contact for our residents and for the community building side. So having those forums that are closed by development, we were definitely finding that our social media channels were really taking off, but we were finding that we had people from one end of the country trying to make friends with a neighbour, but actually they're the other side of the country because we've got that many different locations. So the benefit of having an app and those sort of forums means that they're only speaking to people that they're sort of living next door to. And similar with events, over the years we've done we've kind of adopted more of a roadshow sort of way of bringing events to all the different sites, because the lack of green space on some of them, you're very restricted by what you might be able to do, and road closures, etc. So we might do sort of like, we'll have Santa and his brass band of elves go around at Christmas, for example. We used to have ice cream kind of vans that were fully branded go around in summer, Easter egg hunts, that sort of thing. But now we're sort of doing a bit of a mixture. So we're finding that we will do a limited amount of road shows, so they're actually on their doorstep, but we're also doing sort of more regional events like the Bake Off tent we did, for example, very recently. So at least we're tapping into those customers that really they're really looking for that community. They want to be involved, rather than sort of spreading the cost and a much higher cost across a much larger proportion of our residents. But then similarly, I think because of the nature of it being houses and it's not necessarily the same as multifamily, it's really important for us that actually the residents are starting to take kind of accountability for their own community, and it's a bit more, so it's not necessarily orchestrated by us all the time, but we have a scheme where if residents want to do their own event or their own coffee morning, for example, as long as we can see that they're marketing that on the app and they've got proof, we can kind of see that there's engagement from other residents, we'll quite happily maybe contribute £100 or something towards that. But it's very much them running their own events rather than it all being kind of orchestrated from us.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Catherine, are you starting to see any trends in unit design, maybe in terms of room size, layout? There was everything was open plan for a while. I think that might be sort of coming towards the end. And are there any specific design trends in single family rental units as opposed to open sale units, or are they still by and large the same?
Our experiences, they're very much the same. In terms of the design, I would say it probably is less open plan. We are still seeing a trend of working from home, so that additional bedroom, or if there's a generous landing, could you fit a cubby hole to put a desk in? So it's flexibility for things like that. And in terms of the technology side of things, where we've got heat pumps going in, then that does affect the design because they take up space. So yeah, we are definitely seeing a range. And in terms of just making sure they're renter ready, I think it's really important. So making sure that you have got the towel rails, making sure that you have got the coat hooks, making sure you have got the mirrors. So there's that renter ready bit that is a step and beyond from the open market sales, I'd say.
And picking up on the heat pump point, are these homes um, becoming more and more energy efficient, and is that a selling point to the renter, do you think? Is that something that's on their checklist when they're shopping around for a new place to live?
I think it is, and I think it was the recent announcement. I think it was Packaged Living with Octopus Energy doing zero bills. I think that is an incredibly strong move, which I think is going to be so positive with the renters. Everybody, talking about cost of living, knowing that you've got low bills. That we are asked that frequently on viewings. What do you think the energy bills are going to be? I think it's a mixed bag. I wouldn't say that everybody across the country is embracing ESG enough. So I think it's something that I think residents are going to start to vote with their feet a lot more, and I think it's something that residents will become more savvy about. But I still don't think it comes up top on their search. I think it comes down to price and location, but that does segue into the energy bills.
Yeah. Vicky, you're presumably in a pretty strong position when it comes to dealing with house builders about what you want in terms of environmental performance. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean we're very much led by the house builders as the experts in regards to sort of new energy efficiency sort of models and things. So we've got air source heat pumps in some of our sites, as well as district network heating systems. We're seeing coming through more in the single family housing arena as well. I was just going to say, just kind of to echo what Catherine was saying, really, in regards to what we're seeing, kind of differences. I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of difference, particularly with the open market sale product. Ultimately, we're all humans that want to kind of rent a home. I would say the main differences within build to rent are particularly in terms of spec. It's more from a management point of view for what makes it build to rent, what makes it easy to manage, what makes it kind of the appliances going to last. And trying to drum up those relationships, not obviously just with the house builders, but also then the end suppliers of, say, white goods and things like that, and having that sort of economies of scale.
Vicky, you mentioned earlier that your tenants very much want to view the unit they're renting as their home. What scope do they have for personalization and customizing the home? I mean, let's say decorating, for example. How far can they go before you start getting worried?
Yeah, so because obviously with the management of that number of properties, we have to have a standard spec. We have a property alteration request form, so if they want to change anything, they can fill that in online. We know what they can't do, or there's some things where that we might say yes, you can do that, but it needs to be through one of our preferred providers, or it needs to be to this particular specification, so we've got some sort of control over it in terms of the longer term maintenance once they've moved out. In terms of decoration, we essentially say they're able to decorate as long as they return it back to exactly how it was before they move out. And we do find, obviously, people have fully decorated the whole house. Others don't tend to as much, or others get very creative with sort of stickers and things that you can do nowadays. So it is a full mixed bag. But generally, people really do understand the fact that when they move out, they will change it back. But that doesn't deter a lot of people, because a lot of those people that are putting the effort in to fully decorate a house, it's because they want to be there long term as well.
Have you been operating long enough now to see some trends in terms of average length of stay? How long do people tend to rent one of your units before they move on?
Yeah, and it's a really difficult one to work out because obviously we're always in a position where we've got some people that have only just moved in, and then we've also got some people that are still with us however long and they haven't actually moved out yet. So trying to actually nail that stat is quite difficult. We do try, we ask when people come to renew, we do ask them in a renewal survey how long do they anticipate wanting to stay with us for, how many years. And I think the latest stat was 80% of people renewing are saying that they actually are looking to renew and they want to stay at least for another 3+ years. So we are seeing that there is a large proportion of people that are kind of coming through that they view it as staying for quite a long time, and those people obviously have already rented from us for a year. Sorry, I forgot my train of thought previously. I was also going to just touch on the ESG sort of side of things, because the other thing that we've seen is people tend to rank highly when we're looking at exactly what ESG aspects and energy sort of efficiency aspects are most important to them. It always does tend to be about the bills. It always does tend to be about sort of the heating and the home in that way. So I would say that it does tend to be the trend that at the moment they're very much interested in what might save them money. And I think there's a big question in the industry still in terms of some of these sort of new things that are coming into the market, and obviously a lot of those will cost more, and I think it's yet to be seen of whether people actually are willing to pay more for those things or not.
Yeah, okay. We've got a question in from the audience, but I think we'll save that for the end. So we'll crack on and we'll come back to that. So I want to finish this portion of the webinar by asking you all in turn to kind of look to the future and predict what you think will be the main areas of growth and innovation and changes in the sector over the next 3 to 5 years. Graham, would you like to kick off with that one?
I'll certainly have a go. It's interesting. I've seen some sites already doing this, where it's not just about single family normal houses. There's a mix coming in, a mix of sites. Vicky, I've seen this in Salford, for example, where you've got townhouses and low-rise apartments coming in as well. And interesting, I was at a session yesterday where people were talking about, will there be a shift almost to create a sector between single family and multifamily, which can fill a requirement in more within cities, in brownfield and greyfield sites, where you could have a higher density, but with the ethos of single family. That's an area where I see some interesting thoughts happening. Moving forward, I think people will start to see how the sector delivers community and delivers accelerated delivery of homes. So this is working with local authorities so they can understand, they can quickly get that sense of community and speed of delivery in partnership with house builders. That's got to be a continuing trend that we need to support.
Thanks, Graham. Katherine, how about you?
Yeah, I'd echo what Graham was saying in terms of the last comment there. Absolutely. I think I'd like to see more. I'd like to see, I think the sector's definitely going to grow, but I'd like to see more creative building techniques coming in. So more ESG friendly building techniques. I think modular construction has been debated, and we've seen some people fall away in terms of being able to supply that, which I think is a shame, because I think there's a challenge in terms of working in labour force, and actually if we can build things in a factory with quality control and products, I think that should be something we should lean into. You know, looking at SIPS panels accelerates the build time, and theoretically is a better, more green, more eco-friendly product that I do think the residents are likely to move to. So I think, yeah, definitely echoing what Graham's saying, but I'd like to see more in terms of the eco-friendly builds.
Yeah, thanks, Katherine. And Vicky?
Yeah, very similar, really. I think there's huge opportunity for single family housing, particularly in the northwest regions. I think there's a huge demand there. So it's quite an exciting time. Interestingly, I was also at a talk yesterday, and I think the other real attractive thing, particularly for investors, that is the low amenity model that single family housing brings. And I suppose the scope of that in terms of scale and who we're targeting here, and the fact that it is the general public, everyday people. It's not high-end amenity, all-inclusive rents that then obviously become very unaffordable for quite a large proportion of the UK. So I think if we're able to get that right, and I can even see that potentially stepping over more onto the multifamily side, I can see that that might be an offering that starts to crop up a little bit more over the next few years. Actually, a lot more multifamily that is built to rent, professional landlord, professional service, but actually lower amenity to kind of target and cater for the wider demographic in the UK.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think amenity like built to rent and student accommodation is definitely going to see a lot of growth. Okay, we've got a couple of questions to get through. Vicky, I'll ask you the first one because it actually leads in quite nicely to what you were just talking about. So this is from Dean Williams, and he asks, with such a diverse customer demographic making it difficult to tailor your marketing efforts, do you target specific customer personas or do you take a broader approach?
Generally a broader approach within lease up. However, we will sort of split A/B test here and there. Again, on a site by site basis, it's very different. It's interesting. We back in the day did big market research report, and we kind of tried to profile customers and kind of pretty naively, I thought that it would be, by sort of age, everyone in the same sort of age bracket will be looking for the same thing. Actually, the outcome was very, very different, and it's more about sort of needs and wants of renters. So we kind of distilled it into kind of maybe 4 different types of renters. Some that are sort of maybe kind of more of a stopgap mindset, some that are maybe longer term, sort of, I think we call them casual renters, some that are actually your family putting down roots. So we sort of it's more about the messaging and targeting those sort of mindsets, I suppose. But initially it's always very broad, and it's more targeted towards people that are already in the market looking, or renters within a certain sort of radius of a site.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Katherine, did you want to add anything to that?
No, we're really similar. It's a broad approach. It really is. Different demographics on all of our sites, as we said earlier on the call. So no, very similar to Vicky's views.
Yeah, okay. Graham, next question here from Naveen Patha. He asks, with Gateway 2 approvals taking long, which hurts viability, do you think even more investors will move towards single family housing?
Interesting question, and it's something which we discussed with our investor and lenders groups ongoing, about the impact, the number of the things which impact the viability of multifamily. There's no doubt about that, and there has been some pausing of investment and commitments to multifamily. We've definitely seen some slowdown there, and we have seen the increase in single family. I don't think it's going to long term stop. I think there's the second staircase issue as well. The investors are seeing the long-term benefits still of build to rent and multifamily. It's just taking a bit longer now to change their mix of viability. The yields still seem to be holding well, and talking to a number of investors. So I don't think it's going to stop build to multifamily at all. It's just creating some pause at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Very quickly, one more question, which I'm going to throw at you, Vicky. This is from Elizabeth Williams. What do you think are the biggest barriers to including more green technology in single-family housing?
I think a few things. I think cost is always, ultimately, if you're investor backed, it's always something that you're looking at. I also think that we're not quite there with some tech at the moment. More from a wider sort of energy saving green sort of, like, I suppose, district network heating systems, etc. There's lots of things that are coming into play at the moment, and I don't think, in terms of like net zero, for example, I don't think there is a very clear pathway at the moment or solution in place, and it's quite difficult, particularly on a build to rent side, to sort of buy into something when you're going to be looking after those properties for a very, very long time to come, and within the next few years there's more likely to be more and more that come into the market that might supersede things. So I think we're in quite a tricky space of sort of testing and seeing what kind of works and where the future lies. I'd say that one of the things that we foresee as being a focus maybe in the next few years is going to be kind of smart tech in terms of being able, particularly from a build to rent provider perspective, being able to sort of monitor and track and have that data in terms of energy usage and things like that. And I think that's another sort of a challenge, I think, for build to rent providers over the next few years.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks to you all for your contributions today. That was a great conversation. Just going to show a couple of quick slides before we wrap up, and then we will leave the session open for a couple of minutes so you can take some notes from all the information in the chat. So our next Urban Living webinar is on April the 11th, and it is called Co-Living's Image Problem and How to Overcome It. We will be grinding our teeth about planners a lot in that one, I'm sure, but there will be some other stuff to get stuck into as well. The link to register for that one is in the chat. If you'd like to work with us at Urban Living News on any of our digital or in-person offerings, please get in touch with my colleague Megan, whose contact details you can see on the screen and also in the chat. Thanks to ARL for being a supporting partner for our endeavours, including this webinar. Thanks ever so much to Vicky, to Graham and to Katherine for their great contributions today. Thank you all for watching. As I said, we'll leave the session open for a couple of minutes so you can take some notes, and I'll hopefully see you all soon, either on another webinar or in person. Have a great weekend and take care. Bye-bye.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinions across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so, they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 52,500 in our email database across all sectors, and over 68,000 across our social channels. Everything we do challenges the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us, and we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, and meet with IHM. Connect with us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.